Yes, it's a great pleasure to have you with us, Mustafa. Uh, for those who don't know him, nearly everybody knows him in Palestine and in different solidarity events. I will just shortly introduce uh, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti. Is a Palestinian physician, human rights advocate, and general secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative. I think he will tell us what is it all about, this Palestinian National Initiative. And he has been a leading voice in exposing the realities of occupation and mobilizing international solidarity. We know each other from the World Social Forum, where he is a leading member with regard to the Palestinian question, and I may say so that the unfortunate, terrible situation in Palestine has made that everywhere in the world the preoccupation of engaged people socially and politically are really it is they are forming networks and demonstrations and so on, and we ourselves uh, uh, have come together in order to pursue some of the uh, contacts with the United Nations and have a plan Miguel Alvarez from Mexico is going to explain to you. Welcome, Mustafa.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be able to welcome everyone to this very important meeting that we have with Mustafa Barghouti. This ongoing process, we call it a coalition, came together just in September. It is composed of various networks and global entities dedicated to creating a strategic coalition, solidarity, and to respond to the suffering and also to the proposals that are coming from the Palestinian people. We have started this process with various actions, meetings, initiatives, and proposals. The first phase, which was led by our brothers and sisters in Palestine, led to the ceasefire. And although we know that this is a very delicate process, we have a more complex agenda now. We need to be strategic. We're focused on establishing priorities. And this meeting today, this webinar, is going to help us greatly in advancing our agenda. Despite the suffering, which is beyond words, which prevents us from saying good day or good evening, rather we'll say a just day, a just tomorrow, a just evening. Welcome, everyone.
If Hania Bitar is on the call, we would love to hear from Hania to welcome Dr. Barghouti.
Sure, Casey. Thank you very much.
Hania.
And thank you, everybody, for your patience. Unfortunately, we had some difficulties in communication, and now things are settled. Of course, as a Palestinian, I'm so proud to have Dr. Barghouti with us today. We have been meeting for quite some months now, and we held several webinars. But this webinar is very close, not only to my heart, to all of you. As someone just said in the chat, Dr. Barghouti is a legend, and he's a genuine legend for us as Palestinians, because every time he opens his mouth to talk, he represents what is really burning inside our hearts, our minds, our desires, our aspirations as Palestinian people, when he talk about unity and the importance of unity, when he confronts journalists with so much sharpness and truth and bravery. He really speaks on behalf of all of us. So we are really proud to have you with us tonight, Dr. Barghouti, despite all your engagements. And we look forward to this evening where so many people are eager to listen to you, to exchange ideas for the current situation, and also to have an eye on the future together. So welcome, and we are really pleased to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Hania. Thank you so much for your kind words. I really appreciate you and what you do, and thank you for your generous words towards me. And thank you, Leo, and everybody for organizing this seminar and this webinar. And I hope we will be able to communicate to you the reality of what's happening in Palestine. And I would say that in the last few days, I really felt very hurt. I feel hurt by the international community. I was so hurt today when I heard the newly elected Chancellor of Germany, the leader of the Democratic Christian Union, who won elections, declaring that he will invite Netanyahu to Germany, despite the fact that Germany is a member of the International Criminal Court, and despite the fact that the International Criminal Court is accusing Netanyahu of war crimes, and he is a wanted person for the war crimes he committed. And yet the leader of Germany, like the leader of the United States of America, like some other Western leaders, have the guts to come out and say that they are happy to invite the war criminal Netanyahu to their countries and show complete and total disregard to international law. I feel not only hurt, but I feel that I'll come to the situation in Palestine, but I have to tell you these things. I also feel that we were cheated for many, many years by so many forces in the West who were telling us that how important the issues of rule of law are, and the issue of democracy, and how much one should respect human rights, and how much everybody should respect international law. And then when it comes to Gaza, and when it comes now to the West Bank, and when it comes to Palestine, all these principles have evaporated totally and completely. Not a single country of these most Western governments had the guts to exercise one single punishment against Israel after it had committed 3 terrible war crimes: the war crime of genocide against the Palestinian people, the war crime of ethnic cleansing, and the war crime of collective punishment, including starving 2 million people. Nothing, no punishment was done. And you compare that to the behavior towards Russia, which was subjected to thousands of sanctions after 2 or 3 months, or within 1 month actually, of the war in Ukraine. So this double standard, this lack of respect to international law, is very indicative of the situation we live in. The war crimes that happened in Gaza that will have a lasting effect for decades are horrible. The United States of America provided Israel with the weapons and with the bombs that were used in Gaza, and some other Western governments did the same. And Israel threw on Gaza up till now almost 90,000 tons of explosives, which is about 37 kilograms of explosives for each man, woman, and child in Gaza. They've killed more than 50,000, 55,000 people, including more than 17,000 children. many women, thousands of women. They've injured 102,000 people. 10% of the population of Gaza have already been disabled, injured, or killed, or imprisoned. If you apply that number to a country like the United States of America, you would be talking about at least 32 to 35 million people killed or injured in the course of 15 months. As a matter of fact, the number of Palestinians killed in Gaza exceeded proportionally all the Americans killed in all American wars, including First and Second World Wars, since the independence of the United States. This gives you an idea about the proportion of how horrible the situation is in Gaza, with almost 90% of all homes destroyed, all universities, most schools, most health centers, most hospitals, purposeful destruction and purposeful damage that was caused to the whole society. Unfortunately, what we were subjected to is not only military attacks using bombs and using airstrikes and using mostly against civilian population, but also Israel conducted, in addition to the usual warfare, they've implicitly caused chemical warfare because many of these explosives have left very terrible material in the soil of Gaza, including depleted uranium, of course, and biological warfare because the destruction of infrastructure in Gaza, including destruction of the supply of clean water, destruction of sewage systems, destruction of course, electricity lines. People don't have electricity since 15 months. They don't have sources of energy. And of course, that has caused so many diseases, including at least 110,000 cases of infectious hepatitis and several cases of poliomyelitis, which we have eradicated long time ago. And on top of that, even when a ceasefire agreement was reached, and when the Palestinian side fulfilled its commitment and released Israeli prisoners, Netanyahu yesterday withheld the release of 603 Palestinian prisoners, and the United States of America declared that Israel has the right not to respect the agreements it has signed about ceasefire. So if there is no international law, if there is no respect to human rights whatsoever, if there is no respect to the decisions of the most important court in the world, the International Criminal Court, and if the United States of America is taking revenge and exercising punitive acts against the International Criminal Court to prevent it from fulfilling its duty of respecting international law. And if any agreement is signed with Israel can be disrespected immediately so that the war can continue in Gaza. And if Israel is now conducting a military warfare on the occupied people in the West Bank, because the Israeli tanks have already entered Jenin and Jenin refugee camp, and an ethnic cleansing have already started in the West Bank, where 40,000 people have been displaced from Jenin refugee camp, and from Tulkarem refugee camp, and from Nur Shams refugee camps. And now Israel declared that it will not allow the people who were displaced from the refugee camps, from their homes, to come back to their homes. And these are people who are originally people who were displaced in 1948 from their towns and villages that Israel destroyed. Now they declare that they cannot go back to their homes. And the warfare is expanding now in the West Bank, which has been subjected now to terrible situation where Israel has imposed almost 1,000 military checkpoints and gates. Imagine villages and communities surrounded by the Israeli army, and then a gate is put in the place. And when the army closes the gate and goes away, people cannot leave. They are transforming our communities, not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, into small little prisons that are subjected, even although we are under Israeli occupation, we are also subjected to military warfare using tanks and airstrikes. What kind of world we live in, which allows all of this to happen to the Palestinian people? And we, the people who have been victims of occupation, the longest occupation in modern history since 58 years, we've been subjected to ethnic cleansing, the longest ethnic cleansing recently since 78 years. We've been subjected to the system of apartheid. We are subjected to death, to discrimination, to lack of basic human needs, to terrible imprisonment, which has already affected 1 million Palestinians out of the 5.3 million Palestinians living in West Bank and Gaza. All of that happens, and we are accused of being the aggressor. And Israel, which is the occupier, the apartheid conductor, and the country that has done so much damage to our lives, becomes the victim. What kind of world we live in? In my opinion, the issue here is no more about Palestinian people who have been subjected to terrible injustice. It's already about the whole world. It's about a world we live in where no international law is respected, where human rights are not respected, where we see the rise of fascism everywhere. In reality, we are not only facing a racist, aggressive Israeli government, we are facing a fascist Israeli government. And we are facing a trend in the Israeli society towards fascism and towards fundamentalism in the most awful way. That is the reality that we have. And believe me, without popular pressure, without popular movement, grassroots movement across the world, this will not stop. And Israel will not be stopped unless it faces sanctions, unless it faces boycott, unless it faces divestment, unless it understands that there is a price to all these horrible crimes that they are committing to the Palestinian people. And I am so worried that Israel will reactivate the war on Gaza. In my opinion, this is Netanyahu's aim, and this is Netanyahu's goal. He is now playing games with the agreement of exchange of prisoners. He suspended the release of Palestinian prisoners, as I told you, because he does not want this war to end. Because he does not want to enter into the second phase of the ceasefire, where Israel would be obliged to stop the war completely and withdraw its forces from Gaza. He doesn't want to do that because he has a fascist government, because he has an aggressive behavior, but most important, because he feels that he can do whatever he wants without being punished for that. That is the reality that we are facing and the risk here. And let me tell you that Netanyahu keeps coming up on TV saying that he has changed the map of the Middle East. What does he mean by that? He means by that not only he has destroyed Gaza completely, and now is in the process of destruction of West Bank, and killing eventually any chance for the creation of a Palestinian state. But more than that, he's talking about reoccupying the southern part of Lebanon, about occupying big parts of Syria, in addition to the Golan Heights that he has already annexed illegally. And he is planning to expand his authority over the whole region. This is the reality of what we see today. And when you see an American president, Mr. Trump, coming out and declaring 3 war crimes openly, that he supports the ethnic cleansing of all Palestinians from Gaza, complete ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Gaza, and he supports the annexation of the West Bank to Israel, a second war crime, And a third war crime without any kind of shame. He declared that he wants to take over the land of Gaza from its people, to conduct an act of theft publicly and take it away from the Palestinian people. By which right this is all happening? In my opinion, we are facing a very dangerous moment. Yes, we are the Palestinians, the ones who are facing most of the dangers now, but in reality, this situation represents a great danger to the whole world and to every community in the world. Because when the fascism starts somewhere, it will not end there. And what we see, what worries me, when I see a party in Sweden, a fascist party winning very big amount of votes, and when I see a fascist German party getting almost 20% of the votes, even more than the Social Democratic Party, which was in the government, which got only 16%. When I see the rise of fascism in Hungary, when I see practically the rise of fascist ideas with Trump administration, of course I worry, because I think this can be the beginning of a very dangerous situation in the whole world. And that's why all the people, the good people in the world, have to unite and have to stand up to this growth of fascism and this growth of aggressive behavior, because eventually it will affect everybody. Nobody can be saved from such a rise of such a terrible phenomena that Palestinians are facing today, and some other people as well. I want also to say, before I end, that yes, we are suffering a lot. Yes, our people have suffered so much in Gaza and also in the West Bank and in Jerusalem and also inside the 1948 areas, because we are facing very aggressive behavior from Israel. Yes, we suffered, but should be very clear to everybody in the whole world that regardless of how much we are oppressed, we will never ever give up. We will never be broken. We will never stop struggling for our freedom. We will never stop struggling for justice. Whatever it takes, and whatever time it will take, we will continue our struggle till we are free. But what we hope to tell you, what the message we want to convey to you, is that our fight is your fight. Our struggle is your struggle. And we should not be left alone in fighting for the freedom of humanity and of the principles of international law and international humanitarian law and human rights at large. Today, Palestine represents the spot, the point, which should gather the support and solidarity worldwide, like South Africa was when it was struggling against apartheid, like Vietnam was when it was struggling against aggression. Today, Palestine, as Nelson Mandela said once, is the most important human issue of our time. And I hope that you and all your colleagues and friends will show the utmost possible solidarity. Please don't stop working to stop this aggression on the Palestinian people. Please don't stop struggling to end the genocide and to prevent another genocide now in the West Bank. Thank you so much.
This was extremely impressive and direct, and really it leaves us with a big shower on our backs. But the question I have is, what can we do besides going to the streets and uh, scream "Free Palestine" and try to do what we can in spite of the increasing repression, especially in countries like mine, in Austria and in Germany? Uh, my question is, uh, we have had an initiative. We still have this initiative, which tries to get the international community of governments, the United Nations, to exercise, chapter 7, which talks about the possibility of sending massively tens of thousands of peace forces to Palestine. And what do you think? Because the Security Council, of course, is blocked by the United States. We discovered that according to a resolution of 1950, the General Assembly could take their position in the case that the Security Council remains inactive in front of a serious threat of the world peace, which is the case. Do you think that this could be a way of not the solution, but at least to get to a permanent ceasefire and get some air for these people who have suffered such a lot?
Well, what you propose is very good if it can be implemented. If the countries of the world in the General Assembly can adopt such a resolution, that would be, of course, wonderful, and it would have an impact. Of course, it will face it will be confronted by the opposition of countries like the United States, but not only the United States. You have, of course, your own government in Austria, and of course, Britain and some other countries. But yes, why not? This proposal should be presented and should be followed up as one solution to the fact that we have paralysis of the Security Council. But in addition to that, I suggest that all of you in your own countries, there are three things that have to be done. First of all, I think dealing with the media bias, because a lot of what I told you about, and a lot of what's happening is not really known to the general public as it should be. And there is a media bias here by many Western media outlets, especially mainstream media. And that should be confronted by challenging them, writing articles about what they do, what they don't write about, what they don't publish about, and also using social media in the most effective way. I think what we need in each of your countries is a network of social media, which we can send you information every day. But we need you to establish networks in your own countries that would reach each media outlet and also reach ordinary people or people of influence. For instance, I imagine like a network of in Austria that includes the names of every member of parliament, the names of every minister, and the names of every director of each of each TV station and newspaper and so on and so forth. It is important to bring in information to people. Don't assume that they know. And please understand that there is a certain blackout about what's happening when it comes to Palestine. Maybe not only about information, but mostly also about the narrative. The Israeli narrative is dominant. And that's why I think media work is important. Second thing, BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions. BDS is very powerful, and it is a way of translating solidarity activities into material effect on Israel. And third, I think it's very important to go after, I mean, there is a very good organization now in Europe functioning. I think it's stationed in Brussels, and it's called Hind Rajab Association. And they are going after each Israeli soldier or officer who tries to visit Europe. They go to the courts and they raise the issue of war crimes, especially that many of these soldiers published on their media outlets, on their social media outlets, they published their crimes. And so there is very strong evidence that these people have participated in the war crimes. And that is also a very good way of enhancing solidarity. But in addition to all of that, of course, public activities like you have been doing before needs to be reactivated now, because we need now the utmost possible pressure to prevent Netanyahu from continuing this crime.
Well, Dr. Barghouti, there is a question about whether or not the Trump proposal would serve as a distraction from the genocide. In other words, if people try to block President Trump from going forward, will this distract people from trying to block the ongoing genocide?
I don't think that President Trump proposal is a distraction. I think he meant it. And that's why Netanyahu came out yesterday exactly in his press conference where he announced that he's not implementing the ceasefire agreement. He came back again saying that all people of Gaza must be displaced. And so it's a very serious matter. It's not just a distraction. And I think the very basic goal of Netanyahu from the beginning of this war was to displace all the people of Gaza to Egypt, to Sinai. And he couldn't do it for two reasons. First of all, the Egyptians would not cooperate in such a plan because they think that such an action would represent a very dangerous, would have a very dangerous effect on their national security. But also because people were steadfast and they refused to leave. And many said they will die and not leave. But Netanyahu is back to that plan. I think they are still talking about it, they and the American side. And that's why while we should work against the reactivation of the genocide, we should also continue to demand the end of this plan of ethnic cleansing, not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. You have to understand that the Israelis think that their Zionist project faces the biggest difficulty because their project was based on two things. First of all, to take over the Palestinian land by force, which they did, and then to displace all Palestinians from that land, which they couldn't. And today there are 7.3 million Palestinians living on the land of historic Palestine, regardless of the fact that 7 million others are refugees in other countries. But we are 7.3 million now on the land of historic Palestine versus 7.1 Jewish Israelis. And for the Israeli Zionist movement, this is a disaster. And that's why their main goal is ethnic cleansing. And that's because they think without that, their Zionist project would not succeed. Since if we stay there and they kill the two-state solution, which they have killed it, or actually, the only solution will be one democratic state with equal rights for everybody. And that's exactly what they hate, even more than two-state solution. So if they don't want two-state solution and they don't want one-state solution, what do they want? Ethnic cleansing. So what Trump said did not come out from vacuum. It came out from Israeli aggravation and from the Israeli proposals. And that's why it's a very dangerous matter that one should stand up to. In addition to that, I have to tell you that, of course, supporting the humanitarian needs of the people is very crucial, both in West Bank and in Gaza, but especially in Gaza. You know, there are so many aspects of what's going on there. I mean, I can't summarize everything, but one very specific thing hurts me a lot, which is that we have at least 4,000 disabled people who have had amputations, mainly children, who need immediate medical care, and there are no sufficient facilities to provide them with that. And one very particular story really touched me a lot when a little child who was 5 years old, there was a video of him talking to his father. This child have lost both of his hands. And the child was asking his father, "Father, when I grow up, will my hands grow again?" And the father, of course, was in tears and couldn't say a word. This is the kind of sad reality we face. This is the kind of tragedies we face. We are trying in medical relief now to provide healthcare to approximately 25,000 orphans, children who lost either one or both of their parents. And they need medical care, they need educational care. It's huge problems, huge problems. But the people are trying their best and trying to support each other in the most possible effective way.
Dr. Barghouti, there have been several questions from people who in the past have experimented with unarmed civilian protection with internationals who would go and accompany people in hopes of providing some protection from the settler attacks and the military attacks. Would you want to comment on whether that's something to pursue?
I think the more international people can come to Palestine, although it's very difficult, the better it will be. But unfortunately, today we are not in the same situation we were in during the Second Intifada, when hundreds and thousands of people came to Palestine and really provided help by their physical presence. Today, Israel is making a lot of restrictions in terms of who can come and who cannot come. But I do believe that there are many people that the Israelis don't know about as solidarity activists. And the more of those people who can come, the better it would be, especially if those can be people with certain professions like medical professions who can come and help in Gaza and also in the West Bank. I think that would be highly appreciated.
Dr. Barghouti, at great risk to yourself, you have helped pursue the National Unity Initiative. Could you speak about that and perhaps also help us better understand what would be the economic viability for reconstruction, given the divisions and the Bantustans that have already been created?
Well, regarding the internal unity of Palestinians, I think it's it's a very important, vital issue for all Palestinians. That's why we never stopped working for that and demanding that. And the last thing we managed to succeed in was the meeting that we had in Beijing with the participation of 14 Palestinian groups and parties, practically all the parties. And we reached an agreement to create a national consensus government that could become the government of both West Bank and Gaza and prevent the separation of Gaza from the West Bank, which is something that the Israelis are trying to achieve. Unfortunately, although this agreement was signed by all parties, up till now the Palestinian Authority is not implementing it. And the reason is probably that some people in the Palestinian Authority think that if they avoid unity, maybe this will improve their chances with Trump, which is absolute rubbish. It's not true. It's clear. Trump doesn't respect weak people. And we will be much stronger as Palestinians when we are united. Regarding the reconstruction of Gaza, this is a big question. We're talking about 50 million tons of rubble that needs to be removed. Can you imagine? 50 million tons of rubble. And a huge amount of support is needed. We're talking about maybe something between 40 and 50 billion dollars that will be needed to reconstruct Gaza completely. But you know what? If we were free to use our natural resources as Palestinians, the first part, if we are free from this Israeli occupation, and we have access to our gas field in Gaza, which is in the within the borders of Gaza Mariner, we could get from that gas field alone no less than $56 billion. So, but the problem is that for the last 20 years after this field was discovered, Israel was preventing us from using it. And there is information that they are digging from below the sea to take out this gas that belongs to Palestinians. And by the way, I think this gas field was one of the reasons why Trump spoke about taking over Gaza, because somebody told him there is $56 billion in that spot that you could use also. So the Arab countries can provide a lot of support, but what we need is to be free from Israeli presence. Without removing the Israeli army from Gaza, we cannot start any serious process of reconstruction.
And Dr. Barghouti, some of your own relatives and you yourself have suffered time in prison. When we have seen reports about Israeli hostages that have been released, there's been a stark contrast in the mainstream media coverage, as you well know, in terms of recognition of the viscerally awful treatment inflicted on Palestinian prisoners. Would you want to comment on what the price looks like for you and your colleagues and your loved ones at this point regarding the threat of imprisonment?
Well, unfortunately, I don't know if the people know, but since the occupation took place in 1967, there were 1 million arrests among Palestinians. Imagine, about 40% of all adult males were in jail. And now we have thousands of Palestinians in Israeli jails, and they are subjected to terrible torture. Since the October 7th, the situation of the prisoners have deteriorated rapidly because the whole system was under Ben Gvir, this fascist. People were tortured with starvation. Each prisoner that came out of prison had lost 20, 30, 40 kilograms of their weight sometimes. They came out all the time in very poor health condition. I met some of the prisoners who were released recently, and they told me that the Israeli army routinely beat them, routinely tortured them. We've lost already in the West, in the prisons from the West Bank, in the Israeli prisons since October 7th. We've lost already 58 Palestinians who were killed, either by torture or bad medical treatment or lack of treatment. And we don't have knowledge about how many Palestinian prisoners were killed from Gaza, but we have reports of field execution that took place. There is at least 1,500 bodies of Palestinians from Gaza near Sditi Man prison, which means they could have been assassinated after even being arrested. What might be shocking to all of you is to know that in addition to the Palestinian prisoners, Israel is still putting in prison 665 Palestinian corpses, bodies of people who were killed by Israeli army or died in prison, including 59 children, whose bodies are kept by the withheld by the Israeli army, including 67 Palestinian prisoners who died in jail, and including 9 women. But the torture that is practiced is most horrible. One of the prisoners that I met told me about the prison he was in, and he reported at least 25 cases of rape against men, where the Israeli soldiers used sticks to rape men. And the Israeli army itself admitted that one of the prisoners was taken to hospital for operation because this act of rape by 5 soldiers at the same time caused the rupture of his rectum and his intestine and severe bleeding. So rape. He also told me that the Israeli army forced them all to be naked and put them on top of each other, like crossing each other. Much worse image, if you want, than what we saw in Ben Gvir prison in Iraq by the American army at one point. So this is the kind of behavior, this is the kind of things people are subjected to. Not only very little food, solitary confinement, sometimes for no reason, torture and beating regularly, deprivation of medical care, and very, very poor conditions, hygienic conditions. They don't let people have more than one set of clothes. They don't allow them to have proper showers. They don't allow them to have showers at all sometimes. And if they have shower, they are given 4 minutes to finish the shower in a cold water in winter, no hot water whatsoever. They were not allowed even to shave for months. And I can go on for a long time, but one very specific case of a person that you saw the images of was Khalid Jarrar, a colleague of mine who was elected as member of Palestinian parliament, a woman in her 60s who was put in jail with no charges, just the so-called administrative detention, like 3,500 other Palestinian prisoners who are put in jail without charges. They don't know why they are in jail. Their lawyers cannot know why they are in jail. And then she was put in for 18 months under administrative detention. And the last 6 months, they put her in solitary confinement alone in a very little cell, which is 1.8 meter by 1 meter. And they closed all the passage, the windows or everything. And she told me she felt she was going to suffocate because she had a serious disease. She has a problem with her immunity system. And to get some air, sometimes she had to depend and lay on the ground and try to find a hole from under the door of her cell to breathe. This is the kind of treatment that Palestinian prisoners face.
Dr. Barghouti, in the chat, there are many expressions of shame and feelings of great outrage. People have said that, in a way, when Netanyahu said this is our 9/11, he's following what the United States has already done, certainly in Iraq and other places. And others have said, what's the most important thing to say to our elected representatives at this point? And you have certainly given us much that needs to be said. But I wonder, have you any further comment along that line?
One last point. I mean, one of my relatives, Nail Barghouti, was supposed to be released yesterday, and Netanyahu blocked that. This man spent 45 years in Israeli jails. This is like the longest ever period for any political prisoner in the world today. And he was supposed to be released yesterday, but the Israelis insisted to deport him to Egypt. And his wife went to the borders to cross to Jordan to fly to Egypt to meet her husband, who haven't been released, unfortunately, yet. And the army didn't let her get out. They prevented her from traveling. So imagine a wife who wants to see her husband, who has been in jail for 45 years, is prevented from traveling to see him in Egypt because he's forcefully will be deported to Egypt. And not only this woman, I mean, many other families, as they told me, were also prevented from traveling. In summary, one word: we are human beings. We Palestinians have to be accepted as equal human beings. Anything less than that is not human and is not acceptable. And I think the big question that should be directed to every minister in your governments, to every parliamentarian, I think we should start with one question. Do you accept Palestinians as equal human beings to Jewish people, for instance, to Israelis, or to other people, or not? If they don't accept as equal human beings, then there is nothing to talk about.
Referring to the outcome of all these terrible things, a possible solution, you talked about a meeting of all groupings, political groupings, including your own party. Did you reach an agreement what could be, once there is a permanent ceasefire, the proposal of the Palestinian people and its organizations? There has been a discussion, one-state solution, two-state solution. There is also one which came up recently about talking about the confederation. Did you elaborate on something where also the solidarity movement could make reference to and support this as a political solution of the conflict?
2 years ago, I wrote an article in The Guardian in which I said that Israel has already killed the two-state solution. And the only alternative to two-state solution is one democratic states with equal rights and equal opportunities for everybody. I still believe in that. But I don't want to waste our time disputing about whether it should be two states or one state. I mean, obviously, Israel has finished the two-state solution. It's over. And any country in the world that keeps saying two-state solution, I say to them, okay, please bring us the two-state solution. But you cannot say you support two-state solution while you don't say that occupation must end completely and all Israeli illegal settlements should be removed out of the West Bank and recognition of Palestine as a state. You recognize Israel, you should recognize Palestine if you believe in two-state solution, like Spain did, like some Sweden did, like Norway recently did. But to talk to us about two-state solution without demanding the end of occupation, the end of settlements, and the recognition of the Palestinian state, this would be just hypocrisy. But nevertheless, whether it's one state or two states, the main issue is freedom. That we, the Palestinians, have freedom. Freedom of choice, freedom of democratic participation, freedom of self-determination. This is the main thing. If two-state solution brings us freedom, they're most welcome. If it is one state, it's even better. But the most important thing here is that you cannot achieve any solution without removing the occupation, the illegal settlements, and the oppressive apartheid system against Palestinians. The goal is freedom and self-determination and allow Palestinians to decide by themselves what should be their future. But in general, if you calculate objectively the reality on the ground, of course, the only solution that can happen is one democratic state.
I'd like to ask Hanya if she would be able to give us her comment and greeting before we close this time together. Hanya?
Sure, thank you, Kathy. In fact, those who follow Dr. Barghouti's talks really can realize all the developments that we go through as Palestinian people. And as Palestinian Jerusalemites who have access to the West Bank and live also in the West Bank, it's really, we are witnessing on a daily basis, again, the efforts to really dismantle Palestinian refugee camps in the north of Palestine, to really evacuate many places from their residence. People are now displaced, just as the situation is in Gaza. People don't know where to go. They don't know, they can't find safe places to be in. And it's not only us who are waiting for Godot, for a savior, for resolutions to be implemented. Somehow, just as Dr. Barghouti mentions, what hurts are so many things. The whole world is watching. They watched what happened in Gaza, And now everybody is watching what is going on a daily basis in the West Bank. And Israel is not being held accountable. And unless Israel is held accountable, this scary movie and film that we have to live as Palestinians will continue to unfold every day with a new surprise, every day with a new happening, with all the efforts just to really make us, not tolerate living on our own land any longer as Palestinians. Just yesterday, a very simple Bedouin family close to our office in Jabba village, which is the closest to Jerusalem, a settler decided that, he wants to settle near those Bedouins. So he was there for 1 week. And then yesterday, he decided to put their tents and their cars on fire. So the whole Bedouin community, were really like in havoc, trying to protect themselves, their families, their children, don't know what to respond. The people in the nearby village went to the Israeli police to inform them, and nothing happens. It's a total green light to do atrocities to us as Palestinians, to kick us out of our land. So my message, in addition to what all Dr. Barghouti has mentioned, if we don't move to really hold Israel accountable, nothing will put a leash on Israel and the United States to continue to do whatever they like and dream of, and regardless of our rights as a Palestinian nation. So for me, really, I would like to thank Dr. Mustafa again for this very inspiring talk, for very concrete recommendations also on actions to be taken in different countries, and also for a very vibrant audience who have been very communicating their thoughts and questions and positions, a very rich chat actually today. So thank you all, and thank you Miguel, my dear Miguel, Leo, Casey, and Susan, for all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Hania.
you.
Dr. Barghouti, our friend from Pax Christi International, Martínez Romero, will close us out with a summary. We are so grateful for your time, and you will be in all of our thoughts and actions that we can take.
Thank you all. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. And thank you, Hania, for everything you said. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Martínez, can you open your camera?
Thank you so much, Dr. Barghouti, for today's insightful about the real situation, and especially the need to increase our solidarity and our capacity to advocate for Palestinians, but also to move to a change. I remember a UN official told me once in Colombia, my country, the UN Declaration of Human Rights starts not with the phrase, we the states of the world, but we the people of the world. So I will share with you some ideas that I collected today for our reflection, for our follow-up as global solidarity with for peace in Palestine, and for all of us to continue in strategizing what we are intending at this moment as civil society and faith-based organizations and networks for accompanying effectively what you and your people are struggling. Your main messages I collected there is hard when international community doesn't follow international rules, the case of Germany, USA, that it is not distracting, and others. Palestinians have been deceived by many in the West countries. Figures of a horror that has not ended, disproportionately affecting Palestinians, their territories, their health. Biological warfare by Israel, there are evidences of this, an ethnic cleaning campaign, fundamentalism, and fascism. There is no international law for Palestinians, but it is not a matter of Palestinians, but the world in itself. There is an intention to attack all countries in the region. Although there have been intentions by all parties to form a national government, the Palestinian Authority has not reacted yet, something that we will be pushing for. if we can, as civil society organizations. Natural resources, gas in this case, is in the interest of geopolitics agenda by others. And this main message is by you to move to action. There won't be peace unless many boycotts and other actions are made to oblige Israel to stop completely its genocide. We will never stop struggling for justice. We will never give up. Our fight is your fight. Our struggle is your struggle. Continue with public solidarity actions, and you invited us three main actions: dealing with media bias, confront them, and violate all fake news and narratives. BDS boycotts, divest, and sanctions, and take those soldiers accused of all or war crimes to the court. So these have been some initiatives by many in Europe, for example. And we, as civil society organizations, networks, faith-based bodies, has the power to advocate for just peace for Palestinians. Our main demands, we remember this today, it's ensuring Palestinian voices are in any process working to a peaceful solution. The United Nations SCR 377, the right to peace and autonomy, and the resolution is the roadmap to avoid continuing frustrated by the veto power. The states, independently and by regional groups, should continue acting to stop this genocide. Stop US and others' foreign policy against Palestine. Stop sending weapons. It is not only Palestine, there is an interconnectedness strategy to affect and attack Palestinians, Lebanese, and Syrian people. And we need to coordinate our main efforts to follow up and advocate for a consolidation of the ceasefire. The questions for today, or ideas, you said at the end, freedom and self-determination are the main values for all in this struggle. This is an issue of humanity, not only for Palestine, but for all of us. Are we ready to pursue a global summit of civil society and social movements and Palestinian organizations to chart a path forward with the goal to generate ideas for the future of the Palestinian people's rights, sovereignty, dignity, accountability, etc., coming back to the right of people to say no to this tragedy? Is it possible for some countries interested in creating a safety net for Palestinians to confront those that refuse to support them? You? And the issue, again, an armed civilian force accompaniment, you responded, well appreciated, Dr. Barghouti. And then we will continue reflection and actions on this interconnectedness, geopolitics between Gaza, Lebanon, and Syrian conflicts. I think I could stop here with all our appreciation for your strongest message, full of hope, although this tragedy has been caused a lot of pain and hurt in all the humanity. So thank you very much, Dr. Barghouti. So we continue in supporting you and your people for the future of the humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very well said. Thank you.
Okay, we have many expressions of gratitude being expressed in the chat, and World Beyond War will be very pleased to make this webinar available to everybody who has registered and try to share the chat as well. The messages are still coming in. If there is anyone else who would like to communicate a message to Dr. Barghouti before we close. Well, thank you, Leo, again for being in touch with Dr. Barghouti for us. And I want to call on Susan Smith with the International Fellowship of Reconciliation. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barghouti. It's absolutely an honor to speak with you. And one thing we were unable to touch upon is the upcoming so-called two-state solution conference at the UN in June, which is co-hosted by Saudi Arabia and France. And Saudi Arabia, of course, is problematic as a host for numerous reasons, including its relationship with Jared Kushner and funding settlements in the West Bank, the execution of many of its citizens, its dismemberment, assassination of Jamal Khashoggi, the house arrest. It's just not a reputable broker of peace. And France, of course, is a eminent colonizer and decolonizing power. And the natural gas reserves off of the coast of Gaza, off of the coast of Lebanon, are, I believe, and I'd like you to comment if you feel comfortable or safe to comment, part of the plan of the Trump administration to turn this into an expanded Riviera of the West, and under the dominations of these allies. And at the same time, Palestine desperately needs the Arab states at this moment to say no to the Riviera of the Mediterranean plan, to Israel's continued genocide, which has now moved into the West Bank as well. So my question is, could you comment on the upcoming two-state solution, and how can we, as your friends and allies who love Palestine so much, help prepare for that in a way that is most constructive to Palestine liberation, inshallah?
Well, thank you. I cannot stay for long because I have another engagement in 5 minutes, but I will try to respond quickly. First of all, I want to thank all the friends who are sending thank you messages. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me, and it would mean a lot to the Palestinian people. And I thank you for your solidarity. Regarding this meeting, I mean, I find it funny when France is hosting this meeting while France still did not recognize the state of Palestine. So if they want to really be truthful, each country that would attend should at least, in my opinion, we should put in front of them the three things I mentioned. We will not oppose their effort to call for two-state solution, but if they are really not hypocritical and they mean it seriously, they have to demand end of Israeli occupation completely. They have to demand the removal of Israeli illegal settlements completely, and they have to demand that Palestine would be recognized. If they don't do that, then it's just wasting time. And I think the most urgent thing now, before this conference, the most urgent thing now is to have a continuous ceasefire to stop the genocide, to prevent reactivation of genocide in Gaza, and also to stop the Israeli military operations in the West Bank. These are the two most urgent things that we should all work on. And I really liked what was said, that the people matter. It's not just the governments that matter. People matter. You matter. You can make a difference. We can all make a difference. And that's what we should be doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, we want to make sure that Dr. Barghouti can go to his next appointment. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And please know that there is a website on which this will be posted right away. Goodbye to all.
Bye. Bye.